There is a particular kind of grief that doesn't announce itself loudly. It settles in quietly, in the way a house becomes too still, in the way a mother sits at her writing desk that writes nothing, in the way two sisters look at each other across a room and understand, without speaking, that everything has changed. This is a story about two sisters, one who feels everything and shows it, one who feels everything and doesn't, and it is a story about what happens when the world around them, polite, indifferent, sometimes cruel, asks them to pretend that their hearts don't exist at all. We begin in England, in the countryside of Sussex, in a large and handsome estate called Norland Park. The Dashwood family has lived here for generations, comfortably, respectably, quietly well off, the kind of family that belongs to a place. But families and their places in the world can change very quickly. The owner of Norland, an old uncle, has just died. He was fond of his nephew, Henry Dashwood, and even fonder of his second wife and their 3 daughters. But the law in those days had its own logic, a cold, mechanical logic that had very little to do with love or fairness. The estate could not simply be left to the daughters. It passed instead to Henry's son from his first marriage, a man named John, and after John to John's young son, a child of 4. Henry Dashwood dies himself only a year later. He dies knowing he has left his wife and daughters very little, £10,000. In the England of Jane Austen's time, that was not a fortune. It was a kind of slow, respectable worry. Before he dies, Henry makes his son John promise to take care of them. John promises. He means it at the time. He is not a bad man exactly. He simply has a wife who is better at talking him out of goodness than the world is better at talking him into it. And so the widow, Mrs. Dashwood, and their 3 daughters find themselves living at Norland as guests in the house that was supposed to be theirs, waiting, uncertain, grieving. The 3 daughters are Elinor, Marianne, and Margaret. Margaret is 13, still young enough to find adventure and everything, too young yet to understand the weight of what has happened. Elinor is 19. She has her father's calm, his steadiness. She loves deeply, but she holds herself together. She tends to the family the way you might tend a fire in a cold room, quietly, carefully, with more effort than anyone notices. These are the women at the center of our story, and what follows, the drawing rooms and the heartbreaks, the proposals and the silences, the misunderstandings and the slow, difficult work of understanding, all of it begins here, in a house that doesn't belong to them anymore, on a grey morning after a funeral. Think about what that must have felt like, not the dramatic grief, the quiet kind, the kind that shows up in ordinary moments, a walk in the garden, a chair that belonged to someone who is gone, a letter addressed to a name no one will use anymore. That is where we begin.
John Dashwood does not give his stepmother and sisters any money. Not £3,000 as he first intended, not 500, not even 100. By the time his wife, Fanny, is done talking him through his reasoning, gently, patiently, with the particular skill of someone who knows exactly how to reshape a thought until it becomes unrecognizable, he has convinced himself that occasional visits and perhaps some small gifts of fish or game will more than satisfy his father's dying wish. It's a remarkable scene, watching a man's generosity dissolve in real time. He begins with £3,000, then 1,500, then 500, then nothing. And he feels at each reduction that he's being sensible, practical, responsible. Fanny moves into Norland immediately, without warning, without the courtesy of a letter. The house is hers now, and she behaves accordingly. She is not unkind exactly, not in any way that could be named or confronted. She is simply present in every room, quietly replacing one family with another. Mrs. Dashwood, the girl's mother, feels this deeply. She is a woman of strong feeling, much like Marianne. She wants to leave at once. It is Elinor who persuades her to stay, at least until they can find somewhere else to go. During these months at Norland, something else happens, something that will matter enormously. Elinor meets Edward Ferrars. Edward is Fanny's brother, which makes the situation immediately complicated. He's quiet, gentle, a little uncertain of himself. He is not handsome in the way people talk about at parties. He's handsome in the way you notice after an hour of good conversation. He speaks thoughtfully. He listens well. He does not try to perform. Elinor notices him. He notices her. There are evenings in the drawing room, conversations that run longer than they need to, moments where someone says something and the other person hears it differently than they expected to hear it. Something grows between them. Nothing is said directly. In that world, almost nothing important was ever said directly, but you could feel it in the room, the way you feel a change in temperature. The problem, of course, is Fanny. Fanny, who sees what is happening between her brother and her husband's poor half-sister and does not approve. She is not loud about it, she is simply cold, a particular kind of cold that says everything while saying nothing. Mrs. Dashwood eventually finds a place for them to go, a small cottage in Devonshire on the estate of a distant relative named Sir John Middleton. It is far, it is modest, the rent is low, the rooms are smaller than anything they are used to. Marianne, who loves Norland desperately, who has walked its grounds and memorized its trees and wept at the thought of leaving, Marianne says goodbye to the place as though she is saying goodbye to a person. Elinor says goodbye quietly. She packs, she manages, she does not cry in front of anyone. But she's leaving Edward behind. Or rather, she is leaving the space where Edward might have said something, where something might have begun, or become clearer, or been named at last. He says nothing. He visits once before they go. He shakes hands, he is kind and slightly awkward, and says nothing that matters. And then they are gone. The carriage moves away from Norland, the house disappears behind the trees. It's a quiet kind of ending. The kind that doesn't feel like an ending at all. Barton Cottage is small. That is the first thing. Small rooms, small ceilings, small windows that look out onto a gentle valley in Devonshire. But the view is wide and open, and the air is clean, and Sir John Middleton, their landlord and distant relative, turns out to be one of the most genuinely warm-hearted people any of them have ever met. Sir John is boisterous, is always organising something, a dinner, a picnic, a card party, an introduction to a neighbour, a suggestion that they come over immediately and meet someone extraordinary. He has the particular energy of a man who cannot tolerate anyone being unhappy in his vicinity and will cheerfully bludgeon you with hospitality until you are at least distracted. His wife, Lady Middleton, is elegant and quiet and not particularly interested in anything that isn't her children. She is pleasant in the way furniture is pleasant, present, unoffensive, difficult to remember specifically. But it is Lady Middleton's mother who becomes, perhaps unexpectedly, one of the most endearing figures in the story. Mrs. Jennings is a widow, large-hearted and loud, who has made it her life project to marry off every young woman she meets. She sees a pretty girl and immediately wonders who she might be matched with. She asks questions that are slightly too personal. She laughs at her own jokes before she finishes telling them. She is, in the language of the time, a little vulgar. But she is also genuinely kind, and in a world of carefully managed emotions and calculated civility, there is something almost radical about a person who simply says what she thinks and means what she says. Marianne finds her exhausting. Elinor finds her easier to bear than Marianne does, because Elinor is more patient with imperfection in general. The days at Barton settle into a rhythm. Walks in the valley, evenings at Barton Park with the Middletons. Music. Marianne plays the piano with real feeling, the kind that fills a room and makes people stop talking. The countryside is beautiful in that deep rolling way that the English countryside has in autumn. And then,
One wet afternoon, Marianne goes walking on the hills and slips. She falls, twists her ankle, cannot walk, and a young man appears. He seems to come from nowhere. He is tall, with a good face and easy confidence. He doesn't hesitate. He simply walks over, lifts her as though it is the most natural thing in the world, and carries her back to the cottage. His name, they learn shortly after, is John Willoughby. He's staying nearby with a relative. He rides well, he shoots, he reads poetry. He knows opinions about books. He knows Cowper and Scott. He speaks with energy and certainty and humour. And when he talks to Marianne, he talks the way she does, as though feeling things is not an embarrassment, as though passion is a virtue and not a liability. Marianne has never met anyone like him. Neither has anyone in the room, quite frankly. He is dazzling in the way that certain people are, the kind of person who makes everything else seem slightly dimmer by comparison. Elinor watches. She is glad for Marianne's happiness. She also notices things, small things, the kind she doesn't say out loud yet. The way Willoughby commands attention so easily, the way certainty in a person can sometimes look like depth when it might only be confidence. But these are quiet thoughts, and the autumn light is beautiful, and Marianne is laughing. What follows is a kind of enchantment. Willoughby comes to the cottage every day. He and Marianne walk together in the valley. They sit side by side at the piano, reading music, and the distance between them shrinks in the way that distance between two people shrinks when they are becoming something to each other. They have the same tastes in everything, or seem to, the same books, the same music, the same contempt for caution and reservation. Marianne genuinely believes, that to feel things differently from other people is a kind of superiority. And here is someone who agrees with her, who matches her, who does not ask her to be quieter, or more measured, or more sensible. It is intoxicating. Mrs. Dashwood watches with open delight. She is a romantic herself, and she sees in this exactly what she wants to see. Two people perfectly suited, falling naturally into love. Elinor watches more carefully. She notices that no formal declaration has been made. She notices that Willoughby and Marianne behave in public like people who are engaged, and yet they are not. Nothing has been said, no understanding has been reached. They simply exist in this intimate space as though the formalities don't apply to them. This matters more than it might seem. In that world, reputation was fragile. For a young woman without money, reputation was almost all she had. A perceived attachment, if it led nowhere, could damage her future in ways that would last for years. But Mrs. Dashwood doesn't want to spoil things by asking, and Marianne would consider the question an insult to the purity of what she and Willoughby share. They are above such calculations, she believes. They operate on a higher level. There is a moment, a quiet, telling moment, when Elinor asks Marianne gently whether they and Willoughby are engaged. Marianne is almost offended by the question. She says they are not formally engaged, but she speaks of him in a way that leaves no doubt in her own mind that they are, in every important sense, together. Elinor lets it rest. Meanwhile, two other figures enter the story, Colonel Brandon and Edward Ferrars, in different ways. Colonel Brandon comes first. He's a friend of Sir John's, older, quieter, a man who has clearly lived through something difficult and carries it with him like weather. He's 35, which Marianne considers practically ancient. He wears a flannel waistcoat against the cold, which Marianne finds more evidence of his essential dullness. She cannot imagine him in love. She cannot feel anything for someone so careful, so restrained. He watches Marianne play piano with an expression that is impossible to misread. Something in her music reaches him somewhere old and quiet. Marianne doesn't notice. or if she does, she doesn't care. And then, unexpectedly, Edward Ferrars arrives at Barton. Elinor has not forgotten him. She could not forget him, but she has managed carefully not to dwell too obviously on what happened between them, or what didn't happen, what might have been a beginning of something and then wasn't. He arrives looking thin and somewhat pale, and there is something about him, a distraction, an incompleteness that Elinor can't quite account for. He is kind, he is dear to her, but something is not right. She doesn't press him on it. She is, after all, Elinor.
Edward's visit is brief. A few days, a little quiet warmth between him and Elinor, a few evenings in the sitting room where conversation flows easily and something comfortable and old hangs in the air between them. But he is not himself, or not entirely. There are moments when he goes somewhere else, retreats behind his eyes, and Marianne, who was not very patient with anything unexplained, notices and comments. She accuses him affectionately of a certain flatness, of not being animated enough, of not loving things the way they deserve to be loved. Elinor defends him quietly. She understands something about people who feel deeply but don't always show it. She is, after all, one of them. Edward leaves. The cottage settles back into its rhythm, but now there is an absence where there was a presence, and Elinor manages this the way she manages most things, by continuing. And then, abruptly, something happens that changes the temperature of everything. Willoughby leaves. Not gradually, not with ceremony or adequate explanation. He comes to the cottage one morning, earlier than expected, tense in a way he's never been tense before, and announces that he must go to London. He will be gone for an indefinite period. He is not himself. He is clipped and strange. He makes no promises about returning. He says goodbye and goes. Marianne is devastated. Not privately, there is nothing private about Marianne's grief. She cries openly. She cannot eat. She sits at the window for long stretches looking at nothing. She plays piano, and the music she chooses is all sadness and longing, the kind that turns a room into a held breath. Mrs. Dashwood is confused but hopeful. Surely he will write. Surely there is an explanation. Surely this is not an ending. Elinor is worried in a different way. She has no reason to distrust Willoughby exactly, but she cannot explain what just happened, and unexplained behavior in someone who had presented himself so openly, so confidently, it sits uneasily with her. Marianne does receive a letter from Willoughby. She reads it, and her face changes while she reads it. She finishes, and something in her goes quiet in a way that is different from the quietness of sadness. It is the quietness of shock. She doesn't show anyone the letter. She pulls herself together with effort over the following days, and the Dashwoods, with some relief, accept a long-standing invitation from Mrs. Jennings to spend the winter in London. Marianne's hope, which she tries not to let anyone see, is that she will see Willoughby there, that she will understand what happened, that this silence between them is a temporary confusion and not something irreversible. They set off for London. The roads are muddy, the air is cold, the sky is the particular grey of an English November. Marianne sits in the carriage and watches the fields go past and says very little. Elinor sits across from her. She watches her sister. She says nothing either. Some silences are full. This one is.
London in winter. The city is busy and bright, and indifferent to private grief in the way that cities always are. They settle into Mrs. Jennings's house in Berkeley Street. It is comfortable and a little chaotic, because Mrs. Jennings's world is comfortable and a little chaotic. There are calls to make and calls to receive, drawing rooms and parties, the constant social machinery of a certain kind of English life. Marianne writes to Willoughby the moment they arrive. She writes, as far as Elinor can tell, with everything she has. She sends the letter and waits. Elinor is uneasy. She knows Marianne has written. She knows because Marianne's hope for a day or two is palpable. the particular brightness of someone waiting for an answer they are sure will come. It does not come. Marianne writes again. She cannot help herself. She needs to understand. She needs to hear from him. She waits by the window in the mornings. She checks for the post with a casualness that fools no one. Then, at a party, one of those large, crowded London gatherings, where sound and warmth press in from all sides, Marianne sees Willoughby. He is there, across the room, not a rumour, not a hope, there in the same space, speaking to someone else. Marianne crosses the room immediately. She calls out to him. She takes his hand. Her face is open with relief, with joy, with the certainty that here, finally, is the explanation she has been waiting for. His response is worse than coldness. It is something closer to blankness. He is polite, careful, entirely remote. He asks about her family. He speaks in the measured, empty phrases of someone addressing a stranger. And then almost immediately he excuses himself and moves away. Marianne stands very still for a moment. Then she is not well. She must sit down. She must go home. Elinor manages everything. The carriage, the explanations, the social obligations. She does everything that needs to be done. No one asks how she is.
There are things Elinor knows that she has told no one. This is the part of the story that is easy to miss because Elinor is so capable, so steady, so willing to absorb difficulty without complaint. It is easy to forget that she is also a person with a secret and a pain and a loss she is carrying privately through all of this. Before leaving Barton, Elinor was told something by a woman named Lucy Steele. Lucy Steele is a young woman of limited education and considerable ambition who had met the Dashwood girls through Sir John Middleton. She is charming in a calculated way, all softness and flattery and careful positioning. She is the kind of person who says kind things with a slight edge underneath them. Lucy Steele tells Elinor in the strictest confidence that she has been secretly engaged to Edward Ferrars for 4 years. 4 years. Elinor sits very still when she hears this. She asks careful questions. She verifies. Lucy produces a miniature portrait, a lock of hair. The evidence is real. Edward, quiet, gentle, uncertain Edward, the man Elinor has been carrying somewhere private inside herself all these months, has been engaged to someone else the entire time. Someone she didn't love, most likely, given how he behaved, but engaged nonetheless. Elinor does not cry in front of Lucy. She barely changes expression. She goes away and sits with it. She processes it the way she processes everything, not by suppressing it, but by holding it steadily, without letting it spill over onto others. She feels it fully. She simply doesn't perform it. She tells no one, not her mother, not Marianne, partly because the engagement is a secret that is not hers to share, partly because her family is already suffering enough, partly because, if she is being honest, she doesn't entirely know how to say it out loud. So when Marianne falls apart over Willoughby in London, Elinor is managing 2 griefs, a sister's visible, consuming one, and her own quiet, private one. She is present for Marianne because she loves her, because Marianne needs someone to hold the edges of the world in place. But the weight of it is real. In London, Lucy Steele appears again. She and her sister are visiting Mrs. Jennings, who has taken them under her wing with the same generous, careless warmth she takes everyone. Lucy is pleasant to Elinor's face and carries the secret between them like a small pointed weapon she occasionally touches to remind herself it's there. Elinor manages this, too. Meanwhile, Colonel Brandon appears. He is a fixture in their London circle, and he is kind, genuinely kind, in the way that only people who have been hurt badly can be kind to others in pain. He pulls Elinor aside one afternoon and tells her carefully something about Willoughby that she needs to know. What he tells her is damning. It involves a young woman, a ward of Brandon's, a girl barely 16, whom Willoughby had pursued and abandoned, and left in a condition that cannot be spoken of plainly in that world, but leaves nothing unclear. He had seduced her and walked away. He had done it without hesitation, without guilt, and then he had walked into Barton and found Marianne. Elinor takes this in. She doesn't share it fully with Marianne yet. Marianne is not in a state to hear it, but it sits with Elinor, changing the shape of Willoughby in her understanding, filling in the corners she had chosen not to examine. He was not what he appeared to be. He was very good at appearing.
Grief, when it is not tended to, finds other ways out. Marianne is not tending to hers. She is living inside it, wearing it, breathing it, refusing the small daily consolations that might begin to soften the edges. She does not want the edges softened. To soften them would feel like acceptance, and acceptance would feel like a betrayal of everything she believed. This is one of the things that is both admirable and most difficult about Marianne. Her feeling is genuine and complete. She does not perform grief, she inhabits it. She simply has never been taught, or perhaps never allowed herself to learn, that you can fully feel something and still choose not to be consumed by it. Elinor watches this happening and feels helpless in a way that is new. She can manage situations, she can be useful, but she cannot reach into her sister and rearrange the interior. There are social visits, obligations to meet, days that must be gotten through. Colonel Brandon appears regularly, quietly attentive without being intrusive. He does not ask Marianne how she is feeling. He simply makes himself present, offers rides, accompaniment, small practical kindnesses. He seems to understand that some pain cannot be talked around. Mrs. Jennings, with the best of intentions, talks around it constantly. She has opinions about Willoughby, theories about what happened, suggestions for remedies. She means well. Every word she says means well. Some of them land wrong. There is a subplot moving through London at this time involving Edward Ferrars and his family. His mother, Mrs. Ferrars, is a formidable woman of the kind who wields money and disapproval in equal measure. She has plans for Edward, specific plans involving a suitable marriage that will serve the family's social ambitions. Edward, who has his own quiet ideas about what he wants, does not fit easily into these plans. The Ferrars situation simmers in the background of Elinor's awareness. She knows things that she cannot say. She watches and waits. Then the Dashwood sisters encounter someone new, or almost new. The Palmers, relatives of Mrs. Jennings, appear in their circle. Mrs. Palmer is cheerful and young and slightly silly and very fond of everyone. Mr. Palmer is deliberately indifferent to everything around him, which is his way of seeming superior. He is not unkind, just enclosed. They balance each other in the slightly improbable way that certain couples do. The Palmers live at a place called Cleveland in Somersetshire, a house that will matter later in ways no one anticipates yet. But for now, the London winter continues. The days are short, the drawing rooms are warm. Marianne sits in them like someone waiting to be somewhere else. One evening at a party at the Middletons, something shifts. It is not a dramatic shift. It is the shift of a person who has been carrying something very heavy for a long time and who, just for a moment, puts it down. Not because they have resolved anything, but because they are tired. Marianne plays piano. She plays for a long time, and what she plays is not entirely sad. There is something else in it, something reaching forward rather than back. It is a small thing, but Elinor notices.
The secret comes out. This is how it happens. Lucy Steele, who has been feeding on the small, private power of knowing something Elinor knows, makes the mistake of telling someone she shouldn't. She tells Mrs. Ferrars's daughter, Anne, who is indiscreet, about her engagement to Edward. The information reaches Mrs. Ferrars. Mrs. Ferrars, whose sense of family dignity is absolute and whose tolerance for surprises is zero, reacts exactly as you would expect. She cuts Edward off entirely. No money, no inheritance, no acknowledgement. She transfers everything she had intended for him to his younger brother, Robert, who accepts the windfall with cheerful self-satisfaction because Robert is exactly the kind of person who does. Edward is disowned, and the Dashwood sisters, who are caught at the edges of all of this, watch it unfold through the conversations and letters that circulate through Mrs. Jennings's house. Elinor receives the news of Edward's disownment with the particular steadiness she brings to everything painful. She feels for him. She knows what it has cost him. She also, privately, understands something important. If he had been released from Lucy Steele, he would no longer be an engaged man. He would be free, at last, from whatever obligation had kept him bound to a promise he never seemed able to speak of without discomfort. But she does not let herself build too much on this thought. She has learned these past months not to build on uncertain ground. There is a remarkable scene, remarkable for what it contains and what it quietly implies, when Elinor meets with Robert Ferrars at a shop. Robert is examining toothpick cases with great seriousness and very limited self-awareness. He is the kind of man who considers his own preferences important enough to discuss at length. He recommends them. He expounds. He is genuinely, effortlessly insufferable. Elinor is patient. She is always patient. But watching Robert, now the heir, now the approved son, now the one who gets everything by simple virtue of not being Edward, she feels the unfairness of it quietly, the way she feels most things, carriedly, quietly. Colonel Brandon, meanwhile, has been doing something extraordinary. He has offered Edward a living, a position as clergyman on his estate at Delaford. It is not a wealthy position, but it is a real one. It means Edward can have something to build on, something of his own. He sends this offer through Elinor. This is either very kind or very perceptive, or possibly both. Brandon knows what Elinor feels for Edward, even if she has never said it directly. Asking her to deliver this good news is a gift, a small, dignified way of giving her a role in Edward's future when she had believed herself to have none. Elinor delivers the news. She sits with it afterwards. She's glad for Edward. She is. The fact that this gladness also hurts is simply a fact she holds, the way she holds most things, carefully, quietly.
The season in London is drawing to a close. Mrs. Jennings begins talking about her other daughter, Mrs. Palmer, and the house at Cleveland in Somersetshire. The Palmers have invited them all for a visit on the way back to Barton. The Dashwood sisters accept. Cleveland is a large, handsome house in gentle country. The Palmers are warm in their individual ways. There are walks, dinners, evenings in the library. After the compressed social pressure of London, the air here feels larger. But Marianne, who has been holding herself together by some internal mechanism she has not fully interrogated, finds herself undone by the landscape. Cleveland is near Willoughby's family estate at Combe Magna, close enough that the countryside is his countryside, close enough that every walk she takes, every view she sees is one he might have seen, might have known. She walks alone in the wet grass in the evenings, stays out past dark, as though proximity to the landscape is a way of being close to what she has lost. She becomes ill, not as a metaphor, actually ill, a cold that turns into something worse, a fever that climbs despite everything anyone can do. She is confined to bed. She becomes delirious at times. She is so ill that Mrs. Palmer takes her baby and leaves, frightened of contagion. Elinor nurses her, barely sleeps, sits by her bed and watches her face to face in the firelight and thinks thoughts she doesn't finish.
There is a message sent to Mrs. Dashwood. There are 2 days, perhaps 3, where Marianne is genuinely dangerous. And then someone else arrives. Willoughby comes. He rides through the night to reach Cleveland, having heard, somehow through someone, that Marianne is gravely ill. He arrives at the house and finds Elinor, and he sits with her, and he talks to her with more honesty than he has ever talked to anyone. He was not entirely bad, he tells her. He is not offering this as an excuse, more as a fact he needs someone to understand. He had real feelings for Marianne, real, genuine ones. He had not invented the emotion. But when money became the question, when his relative threatened to cut him off unless he married immediately, and when Miss Grey appeared with £50,000, he chose the money. He told himself he was being realistic. He told himself Marianne would recover. He is not sure he was right. Elinor listens. She feels something complicated, sympathy she did not expect to feel, alongside clarity about what he did and what it cost. He is human, weak in the way that comfortable, attractive people are sometimes weak. He chose ease over love, and now is not entirely sure what he chose it for. He leaves before dawn. Marianne does not know he was there. She begins slowly to recover. The fever breaks. The colour comes back. She sleeps and wakes and sleeps again, and each time she wakes she seems more like herself. Mrs. Dashwood arrives, having travelled through the night after Elinor's message. She sits at Marianne's bedside and takes her daughter's hands and simply holds them. And this, more than any medicine, more than any careful nursing, seems to help. The worst is over.
On the journey home to Parton, something changes in Marianne. Not all at once, not in a dramatic, sudden way. More like the change that happens in a room when someone opens a window that has been closed too long, small but real. She is quieter than before. Not the quiet of grief, which is a kind of fullness, a room too packed with feeling to allow for anything else. This is a different quiet, more like reflection, more like someone sitting with something they have been running from and finally deciding to stop running. She talks to Elinor, not about Willoughby directly, not at first, about herself, about the way she had been living, about the way she had organized her understanding of the world so that only certain things were allowed to be real, intense feeling, grand love, absolute conviction, and everything else was dismissed as mediocrity. She says, "I did not respect the ordinary. I thought it was beneath me." She says, "I was so sure that what I felt was too large for caution, that caution was for people who felt less." She says, "I never thought about what I might do to you or to Mama by refusing to be anything other than what I was." Elinor listens. She does not say, "I told you so." She does not say, "I knew." She simply listens. This is one of the things about Elinor that is easiest to overlook. She is not superior. She does not hold her self-control up as a virtue others are failing to match. She holds it as a discipline she had had to learn, that costs her something, that she has never found easy. The fact that Marianne never saw this cost was Marianne's blindness, not Elinor's deception. They sit in the carriage together, watching the winter countryside move past. They do not fill every moment with words. Some miles are simply shared. Back at Barton, the cottage feels smaller than they remember it, familiar, which is a kind of comfort. The quiet Devonshire days resume. Marianne begins walking again, not the restless, grief-driven walks of before, walks of exposure almost, daring the weather to match her feelings. These walks are different. She notices things, the specific light on a particular hill at a particular time of day, the sound of the water in the valley, the colour of mud in the lane after rain, small, unglamorous things, real.
She plays piano again, and the music is different. Not sadder, not brighter, more complete somehow. She plays pieces that have difficulty in them, not just beauty. Colonel Brandon calls regularly. He always has a reason, some message, some book he thought she might like, or some arrangement with Sir John. But really, he comes because he comes. Because there is something between his careful attention and Marianne's gradually opening awareness that is beginning, slowly and without announcement, to become something. Marianne has not decided anything about Colonel Brandon. She is not a person who decides things carefully. She is beginning to understand that about herself. But she is, for the first time, not dismissing him. She sees for the first time that a flannel waistcoat does not constitute a character flaw, that a person who has been wounded and carries it quietly might be worth knowing, that restraint is not the opposite of feeling. She is beginning to see.
There is still the matter of Lucy Steele and Edward Ferrars. In the world of this story, secrets have a way of moving from person to person, room to room, until they've been everywhere and nowhere at once. The secret of the Ferrars' engagement has been exposed. Edward is disowned. Lucy Steele, for all her careful, patient management of the situation, finds herself engaged to a man with no income and no prospects. This is not what Lucy Steele was angling for. Lucy Steele is not a villain. She is simply a person of limited resources who has learned very carefully how to manage what she has. She grew up without money. She understood from an early age that for a woman without fortune, a good marriage was not a romantic aspiration, but a survival strategy. She had secured Edward's promise when she was young and he was foolish, and she had held on to it because it was an investment, and she had intended to collect. But an investment in a disinherited man is not much of an investment. And so, with a speed and practicality that is almost admirable in its shamelessness, she transfers her attention from Edward to Robert Ferrars. Robert Ferrars, who has always considered himself the superior Ferrars, is enormously flattered. He was charmed by Lucy the moment he met her. She made him laugh. She told him he was right about everything. These are powerful tools. Within weeks, they are secretly married. The news arrives in Barton and ripples through every conversation for days. Mrs. Jennings is delighted. This is exactly the kind of dramatic social development she lives for. The Middletons are astonished. Mrs. Dashwood is baffled and then relieved. Elinor sits with the news very carefully. Edward is free. She knows that. She feels it, sits with it, does not let herself do anything with it yet. The fact of his freedom does not automatically mean anything. He may have no feelings for her at all, or feelings that do not amount to intention. He may simply be a man who has made a mess of one engagement and has no appetite for beginning anything new. She does not build the house yet. She just notes that the ground has changed. Edward comes to Barton. He arrives at the cottage on a day that Elinor is alone. He walks in and immediately there is something strange about him. Color in his face, an odd energy, the look of someone who has something to say and is trying to find the beginning of it. He starts to speak. He stops. He starts again. He is looking for the words, and the words are difficult because what he is trying to say is that he loves her, and he has loved her, and that if she is willing to hear this after everything, after his silence, after Lucy, after all of it, he would very much like to say it plainly. He says it, not elegantly, not with the kind of smooth, practiced delivery that Willoughby might have managed. He says it the way Edward says everything, honestly, a little awkwardly, with complete sincerity underneath the stumbling. Elinor listens, and then she does something that surprised her, I think. She cries. After months of holding everything together, her family's grief, her own, the secret, the management of every difficult room, she cries. Not from sadness, from relief. The kind that comes when something you stopped letting yourself want
turns out to still be there.
It would be a simpler story if this were the ending. Two people saying what they feel, finally, after a long time of not saying it. But the world in this story has opinions about happy endings, and most of those opinions involve money. Mrs. Ferrars, Edward's mother, has already made her position clear. He is disowned. She has transferred her affection and her fortune to Robert, who has since compounded the insult by marrying Lucy Steele. The Ferrars family is in a state of undignified chaos. Edward's situation is this. He has Colonel Brandon's living at Delaford, which is modest but real. He has almost no capital. He has a respectable education and no established means. He is, by the calculations of the world, not a good prospect for anyone. What he has is Elinor, and Colonel Brandon's living at Delaford, and a character that, once you've been paying attention, is worth more than most of the fortune in the room. Mrs. Dashwood receives the news of the engagement with uncomplicated joy. She loves Edward. She has always loved Edward, or at least the idea of Edward, who Elinor loved, which in Mrs. Dashwood's emotional mathematics amounted to the same thing. She gives the engagement her full, warm blessing. Marianne, who has been moving through these months with a different kind of awareness, is genuinely pleased, not merely polite, pleased. She looks at Elinor with a new understanding, aware, perhaps for the first time, of what her sister had been carrying while Marianne was consumed by her own suffering. The engagement is known. The situation begins to be arranged. The living at Delaford will take some months to be properly prepared. There are financial conversations, practical adjustments, the work of translating intention into habitable reality. And then Mrs. Ferrars, after enough time and through enough intermediaries, sends a signal, not a full reconciliation, that would require more flexibility than Mrs. Ferrars possesses, but an acknowledgement, a conditional acceptance. She will receive Elinor. She will not shower them with money, but she will not close the door entirely. It is not warmth, it is not affection, it is the cold arithmetic of a woman who has realized that total estrangement from a son who has done nothing genuinely wrong, and total acceptance of a son who has done something genuinely ridiculous, looks bad, even to herself. Elinor receives this partial acknowledgement with equanimity. She did not need Mrs. Ferrars's approval to be happy. It would be pleasant if it came in fuller form, and perhaps someday it will, but she is not building her life on it. She is building it on something more reliable, something she understands better now than she did a year ago, that love is not the obliteration of good judgment. It is compatible with it. It can be patient and warm and real without requiring you to abandon the parts of yourself that keep the world steady. Edward moves towards Delaford. Elinor moves towards Edward. The shape of their future life begins to come clear. It is small and good. It is the right size for them.
Colonel Brandon. He has been here the whole time, on the edges of every scene, in every room, watching, waiting, being quietly useful. He is easy to overlook, and the story almost invites you to overlook him at first. He is not Willoughby. He does not carry a room. He does not make women forget their better judgment by being irresistible. He is the opposite of that. He is someone you understand slowly, the way you understand a landscape better the longer you live near it. He is 35, old, Marianne had decided, definitively old. He has a past that presses on his face in certain lights. Something happened to him years ago, and he carries it with a dignity that has nothing to do with performance. He does not advertise his pain. He has simply lived with it long enough that it has become part of his texture. The young woman Willoughby ruined, Eliza Williams, was his ward. She was also the daughter of a woman Brandon had loved when he was young, a woman he was not allowed to marry, a woman who was given to his brother instead for money, and who was unhappy, and who died young. Brandon carries this. He carries the love he was not allowed to have,
And the daughter of that love, Eliza, now ruined, now in trouble, now his responsibility. And he carries it all, without complaint, without display. When he first saw Marianne play piano, something in him recognized something. Not the girl he had lost, but the feeling, the aliveness, the willingness to feel without apology. He had not thought that kind of feeling was still available to him. He had thought he was past it. Marianne, recovering from Willoughby, slowly opening to what is around her rather than what is gone, begins to see Brandon clearly for the first time. She sees the steadiness, the depth, the way he has been present without demanding anything, the way he asks nothing of her, not gratitude, not attention, not even notice. She begins to look for him in rooms. She plays for him sometimes in the evenings at Barton Park. She selects things with care. The music is different from what she used to play, richer, slower with something underneath it. He listens the way he always listens, completely. There is no declaration in this part of the story. There is no grand moment. There is just the slow accumulation of evenings, of walks, of conversations that run longer than they started, of two people whose pain has made them patient enough to see each other truly. Marianne was not wrong about love exactly. She was wrong about what it looked like. She thought it looked like Willoughby, immediate, dazzling, consuming. She had not understood that it could also look like this, like a man standing at the edge of a room with a careful expression, hoping you are well. She begins to love him. Not all at once, the way a room warms when you finally light the fire properly, when the kindling catches and the warmth spreads slowly, and by evening it is genuinely warm, and you can't pinpoint exactly when that happened. She begins to love him. And it is not a lesser love for being quieter. It is in some ways larger, because it is chosen, because she has been somewhere dark, and she has looked at what she lost and who she was, and she has chosen Brandon with her eyes open. And that choosing, deliberate, clear-eyed, freely made, is not something she would have been capable of before. She is different now, and so is the love.
There is a word that runs through this entire story like a thread. Sensibility. In Jane Austen's England, sensibility meant something very specific. It meant emotional sensitivity, the capacity to feel deeply, to be moved by beauty, to respond to experience with the full force of one's feelings. It was considered by many people to be a virtue, evidence of a refined and cultivated nature. Marianne has sensibility, in abundance. She has always been the most obvious representative, the one who cries openly, who loves passionately, who cannot pretend she feels something she doesn't, who is offended by the concept of emotional management. But Elinor also has sensibility. This is what the novel quietly insists on, and what is easy to miss because Elinor is so controlled, so composed, so unwilling to make a scene. It would be a mistake to read Elinor as someone who doesn't feel. She feels everything. She has simply made a different choice about what to do with those feelings. The title is not Sense versus Sensibility, it is Sense and Sensibility, both together, in both of them. What the novel argues, in its gentle, witty, and entirely unshowy way, is that neither pure feeling nor pure reason is enough. Marianne's sensibility, unchecked, nearly destroys her. Elinor's sense, taken to an extreme, would make her a stranger to her own life. The point is integration, the capacity to feel fully and still act wisely, to reason clearly and still love honestly. Both sisters have to grow toward this. Marianne has to learn containment. Elinor has to learn to let herself be seen. There is a moment, not in London, not in any dramatic scene, that happens quietly at Barton. Elinor tells her mother about Edward.
about everything, about the secret she has been carrying since Lucy Steele told her, about the months of knowing, of nursing that knowledge, of being expected to behave as though Edward was simply a pleasant acquaintance. Her mother listens, and then she does something that surprises Elinor. She cries, not for herself, for Elinor, for the weight of it, for all the time Elinor spent being strong for everyone else while carrying something like this alone. Elinor had not expected to be cried over. She undoes her a little. She accepts it. This is growth too, allowing yourself to be cried over, letting the people who love you see the places where you needed them. Marianne watches this from the other end of the room and says nothing. But her face changes. She is beginning to understand what she missed. What was happening in Elinor all those months in London, all those evenings at Barton? She had been so certain that her sister did not feel enough, and the truth is that her sister felt more than she could say, and said it to no one, and kept all of it inside, because that was what the situation required. This is the kind of understanding that can't be talked into. It has to arrive on its own.
Let us go back to Willoughby one last time. Not to forgive him exactly, or to condemn him, but to understand him, because he deserves understanding, even if he doesn't deserve what he did. He is human in a way that is both sympathetic and uncomfortable. He loved Marianne, or something that functioned like love, something real and immediate that lit him up when he was with her and that he thought, at the time, was enough to build on. He was wrong, or rather, when it came to the moment of choosing between love and money, between the person and the income, he chose what he understood. He chose what he had always been told was necessary. He married Miss Grey for her fortune. He did so deliberately, while knowing what he was abandoning. He told himself it was practical. He told himself people recovered from these things. He is married now. He has the money. He has the house. He has presumably the social stability he believed he needed. He is not happy. We know this from the midnight ride to Cleveland, from the way he talked to Elinor in the darkness, urgently, almost desperately, as though he needed someone to understand what he lost, what he chose, what he cannot undo. He was not performing remorse for an audience. He was simply a man in a house he built himself, looking at the walls. There is something the novel does here that is worth pausing over. It lets Willoughby have his humanity without excusing his behavior. He is not redeemed by regret. He has to live in the consequences of his choice. But he is also not made into a villain, a flat, cardboard obstacle that the story disposes of cleanly. He is left complicated, left real. This is one of the things Jane Austen does that people sometimes underestimate. She does not tidy her people. She allows them to be partial, inconsistent, better in some moments and worse in others. Her characters are not lessons, they are people. Willoughby, in his marriage, has what he wanted, and perhaps, if he is honest, it is not quite the shape of what he thought he wanted. The money is real. The loss is also real. Marianne will recover. She will, in time, be genuinely happy with Colonel Brandon. She will look back on this period of her life not as the wound she thought it was, but as something she passed through and came out of differently, smaller in some ways, larger in others. She will probably think of Willoughby sometimes, the way you think of a place you visited when you were very young, vivid, slightly unreal, belonging to a person you used to be. He will probably think of her too. And that is all. That is where the story leaves them, each in their own life, marked by the same thing, moving in different directions.
The world of Sense and Sensibility is full of money, not because Jane Austen was obsessed with it, but because she was honest about it. In the England she wrote about, money was not a separate concern from love. It was intimately, sometimes brutally, bound up with it. A woman without fortune had almost no choices. Her possibilities were determined by who she could persuade to marry her, and who she could persuade was determined in large part by how she was seen, how she behaved, how she talked, how she presented herself, what her family's reputation was, and yes, how much she was likely to bring to a marriage. This is why Fanny Dashwood could talk her husband out of his basic decency with almost no effort. He didn't need much convincing that the money was his. The law agreed with him. Society agreed with him. What else did he need? This is why Lucy Steele's attachment to Edward was also partly strategic. Not that the feeling wasn't real. It might have been at the beginning, but she was also a young woman doing the math of her situation, and Edward Ferrars was a good answer to that math. This is why Willoughby's choice was not simply selfish, but also, in his world, logical. He needed money. Miss Grey had money. Marianne did not. The arithmetic was not complicated. And this is why the Dashwood women, Mrs. Dashwood and her 3 daughters, with their £10,000 and their small cottage rent, had to be so careful, so socially correct, so watchful of their position. They could not afford mistakes that women with money could absorb. Jane Austen saw all of this clearly, and she wrote about it clearly, with warmth and humour and a particular brand of irony that lets you laugh at the system while also seeing exactly how trapped everyone is inside it. She never moralizes about money. She simply shows what it does, how it shapes behavior, distorts relationships, turns people into calculators when they would rather be lovers. She shows this without bitterness, which is remarkable. She had very little money herself. She depended for most of her adult life on the generosity of relatives. She understood the math from the inside. Elinor and Marianne, at the end of the story, are both married to men they love. They are both financially settled, modestly but genuinely. They will not be rich, but they will be housed, warm, safe. This matters. Jane Austen does not pretend that love conquers material reality, but she also insists that love is real, that it exists inside material reality and is worth taking seriously, worth protecting, worth the difficulty of figuring out who a person actually is before you give yourself to them. That is the balance she was always striking, between the heart and the world, between feeling and sense. Sense and sensibility.
The engagements are made. The arrangements are settled. The world, which had been complicated and difficult and full of small cruelties and misunderstandings, begins to arrange itself into something livable. Elinor and Edward, Marianne and Colonel Brandon. 2 sisters, 2 men, 2 very different kinds of love stories. Elinor's love story is quiet. It was built in rooms, in conversations, in the management of difficult situations side by side. It was built on Edward's genuine character, his uncertainty and his honesty, and his fundamental decency, and on Elinor's capacity to see that character clearly and to wait for it to find itself. It is not a love story that makes anyone swoon. It is the kind you recognize only after you've had a few years of life, when you understand that being truly known and truly respected by another person is not a small thing. It is, in fact, one of the largest things there is. Marianne's love story is stranger and more interesting than it first appears. She fell spectacularly, and she lost spectacularly, and she rebuilt from the pieces with a kind of deliberateness she would never have been capable of before Willoughby. Her love for Brandon is not the replacement of something. It is something new. She is not settling. She is choosing with more of herself than she knew she had. Brandon, for his part, is hardly to believe it. He had stopped expecting it. He had been so long in the role of the quiet, reliable, slightly melancholy presence at the edges of other people's happiness that the idea of being at the center of someone's, of Marianne's, is almost too large to hold. He holds it carefully, the way he does everything.
Mrs. Dashwood watches her daughters settle into their lives with the uncomplicated delight of a mother who has been anxious for a long time and is finally allowed not to be. She is not a person who does anything halfway, including relief. Sir John Middleton is thrilled. He is always thrilled when things work out. He tells everyone. Mrs. Jennings claims credit for all of it, in ways that are entirely inaccurate and completely sincere. Margaret, the youngest sister, is 13 and cheerful, and beginning to have her own thoughts about the future, which she keeps mostly to herself because she has been paying attention to what happens when you don't. The cottage at Barton, small, warm, familiar, begins to feel like a starting point rather than a destination. Something happened here, something important. These women came here with grief, very little money, and a great deal of feeling they didn't know what to do with. They are leaving differently than they arrived.
There is one more thing worth saying about Elinor. Not what she did, but what it cost. She managed the grief, the secret, the social obligations, the nursing, the complicated family dynamics, the London winter, the return, the reassembly of a normal life. She managed all of it, and the world largely allowed her to manage it without asking too many questions about how she was. This is what happens to capable people. The world trusts them with the difficult things because they handled the difficult things so well, and it doesn't occur to anyone to ask whether the handling is costing them anything. Elinor would not have complained, even if she had been asked. She doesn't believe in complaint as a form of communication, not because she is repressed, but because she has a precise and honest sense of what is useful and what is not, and complaint, in her understanding, is rarely useful. But she was carrying things. She was carrying Edward's secret and her own feelings for him, and Marianne's pain on top of her own, and the daily management of a household in difficult circumstances, and the constant performance of calm for a mother who needed calm and a sister who needed steady ground. She was doing all of this, and she was not thanked for most of it, and she did not expect to be thanked, but the weight was real. What she gets in the end, what she is given, is not just Edward, it is resolution. The resolution of months of uncertainty, the answer to a question she had stopped letting herself ask too directly, the ability to stop managing everything and simply live inside her own life for a while. This is what she wanted. Not grand romance, not drama, just the freedom to live honestly inside a life she chose. And the novel, which has been watching her this whole time with deep affection and enormous respect, gives her this, quietly, without ceremony, the way she would have wanted it. Marianne's ending is the more visible one, the transformation, the growth, the young woman who was nearly destroyed by one man and rebuilt herself into someone capable of genuinely loving another. It is the arc we watch, it is the one that moves. But Elinor's is the one that means something different. It says patience is not passivity, restraint is not absence, strength is not the same as not feeling, and a person who holds everything together, quietly, at great personal cost, deserves to be held in the end too. She is.
So what does this story leave us with? Not a simple lesson. Jane Austen never dealt in simple lessons. She dealt with truth. The small, specific, somewhat inconvenient kind that arrives not in declarations, but in details. In a drawing room at dusk, in the particular way a person avoids your eyes, in a letter that is too polished to be honest, in a quiet man who keeps showing up because he doesn't know any other way to say what he feels. Sense and Sensibility tells us something about who we are, or who we can be, at our best. It tells us that feeling deeply is not a weakness, but that feeling without wisdom can make you vulnerable to people who perform feeling without having it. It tells us that managing yourself, holding yourself together, being the steady one, this is love too. A kind of love that doesn't always get recognized, but that matters enormously to the people around you. It tells us that recovery is possible.
not quick and not painful, and not by simply deciding to feel differently, but genuinely possible if you were willing to look clearly at what happened and who you were in it. It tells us that the people worth loving are often the ones who are slow to announce themselves, who don't dazzle, who show up again and again because they can't help it, and whose reliability you mistake for dullness until the day you understand that reliability is one of the deepest forms of love. It tells us that the world is arranged in ways that are often unfair, and that navigating those arrangements with grace does not require pretending they aren't unfair. You can know the system is unjust and still find ways to live inside it with dignity. And it tells us, this is perhaps the thing it tells us most quietly, that two people can be very different from each other and still love each other. That sense and sensibility are not opposites, that the world needs both, that most of us have both mixed together in our own proportion, and that the work of a life is figuring out how to let them coexist. Elinor and Marianne settle into their lives. The book closes. The drawing room's empty. The carriage moves down the road, away from Barton, toward Delaford, toward somewhere new. But they carry Norland with them, I think. They carry everything that happened, the grief and the embarrassment and the growth and the love that found them in the end, the way real love usually does, slowly, sideways, in a form you almost didn't recognize. That is the story. If it moved something in you, if you found yourself in Elinor or Marianne, in the quiet steadiness or the overwhelming feeling, in the long patience or the hard recovery, then you already understand why Jane Austen has never really gone out of fashion. She wrote about feelings we still have, in rooms that look different but work exactly the same way. Stay with us if you like. There are other stories worth sitting with, other nights worth spending inside a book. We'll be here when you're ready.